At first glance, the teeming streets of East Delhi give no hint of the scar that disfigures this landscape and blights the community. You smell it first, then at the end of the road, you see it. Delhi's mountain of shame, made not of rock and earth, but more than 3 decades of rubbish. Spiralling ever higher, Ghazipur landfill dominates the skyline. 14 million tonnes of household waste, standing 65 metres high. You won't find Ghazipur landfill on any tourist map. But despite tight restrictions, I am allowed onto the site.
The impression is really quite overwhelming. First of all, it's a smell. It's rancid, it's sour, it's horrible. But then the sight around you of birds, dogs, and humans dealing with this mountain of waste.
Every day, trucks are dumping another 3,000 tonnes. Plastic twisted through a never-ending stream of human refuse, churned together with the rotting entrails of animals from a nearby abattoir. There's no concrete base to stop the putrid pile leaking into the ground, so a thick black liquid seeps out. I watch as wild dogs cool off in it, oblivious to the fact that the liquid is highly toxic. It's known to contaminate local water supplies. Amongst the 3 million people living within 5 miles of Ghazipur, I find Rihanna, a mother whose family home overlooks the tip.
दिन किसी ने सबकी दवाइयाँ चलती रहती हैं, सबको परेशानी है इसकी वजह से, इसकी गंदगी की वजह से, और हमेशा बदबू आती रहती है। यहाँ रहने में बहुत परेशानी, दिक्कत हो रही है। गवर्नमेंट से बहुत बोला है कि इसको यहाँ से हटा दिया जाए, लेकिन कोई सुनवाई नहीं है इसकी।
Rihanna keeps her house spotlessly clean. Like everyone who lives here, she's sure the landfill causes illness and shortens lives.
Cow huts. One afternoon. कभी भी इसके अंदर आग लगती है, उसकी वजह से पूरे में पॉल्यूशन हो जाता है, सांस लेने में हमें दिक्कत होती है, बहुत सांस लेने में दिक्कत परेशानी होती है। और भी हैं जो बहुत बुजुर्ग हैं या बहुत छोटे हैं, उनके अंदर उतनी ज़्यादा बीमारी को झेलने की उनमें ताकत नहीं है।
Delhi's population is predicted to swell to 38 million in a decade. Additional landfill sites have been identified to take the extra waste, but protesters always ensure they're not developed. After all, who wants another Ghazipur on their doorstep? I'm hoping Sandeep Kapoor from the East Delhi municipality, which runs the site, can explain how it's still operating 17 years after reaching capacity.
Surely somebody must be to blame for this.
See, you cannot blame a single man. It's a system failure. There was no vision that, once we are dumping things, how we should control that. So problem was not that huge, so nobody thought of that.
What do you say to the people who live in this area? Do you apologise for what's happened?
I'm really sorry that we are sitting on such a huge problem and we doesn't have any ready-made solution for this. But we actually own this problem. We are the people who have to solve this, and we are actually working on this.
Sandeep tells me one of the solutions would be to build small recycling plants across the community, but admits that's a long way off.
In last 2 years, we have installed 12 plants. We are in a process of finalizing few more plants with more.
And how many do you need altogether?
We require at least 200, 300 plants.
So really, the people living here in East Delhi have to live with this for a long time still.
That's a reality.
I go to see one of these new projects in action. For the first time in East Delhi, people are being encouraged to separate their waste. The leftover food will be turned into compost.
इससे काफ़ी सफाई है, काफ़ी क्लीनेस है, हर चीज़ से, बीमारी से, हर चीज़ से बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छी जो है इन्होंने चलाया है जो प्रोग्राम, बहुत अच्छा है, very good.
But despite getting the thumbs up from locals, in a huge city like Delhi, this is a tiny, almost insignificant contribution to waste disposal. My next stop is a much bigger plant, where the authorities want me to see how waste can be converted into energy. Right now, a fifth of the rubbish that's generated in East Delhi ends up here. But the waste is still mixed. Workers have to sift it by hand in sweltering temperatures, selecting items that can be burned to convert into electricity.
This waste-to-energy plant's really the only large-scale recycling they've got going on here at Ghazipur, and it only accounts for 20% of everything that's brought to the tip.
All the rest goes back onto the ever-expanding landfill, which environmental activists insist will continue to grow unless people are forced to segregate their rubbish at source. Satish Sinha helped to draft a new law that introduced fines for those who failed to separate their waste, but accepts it's never been enforced.
You don't send everything to the landfill. You will remove almost 60 to 70% of the waste, and maybe you will have only 30% of the waste which actually needs to go to the landfill. We are all ashamed of this image. This is embarrassment to all of us. You enter the city of Delhi and the first thing you encounter is this huge dump of waste. And it's a point to ponder as to, is this the way people of Delhi want to live?
Some have no choice, often the poorest and most vulnerable. Rag pickers who scour other people's debris as a living, and communities who were here before the tip began. Just a few hundred meters away from the slopes of the waste mountain, Mohammed keeps a herd of dairy cows. He and the cattle moved here in 1976, 7 years before Ghazipur opened.
और हमारे पशुओं के लिए चरागाह थी जिसमें भैंस चरती थी और जैसे मौसम में गर्मी है तो हम भैंसों को नहलाते थे उसमें और हम भी नहाते थे उसमें.
He no longer believes politicians who say they will help to shut down the tip.
इलेक्शन के टाइम जब आता है ना, जब आते हैं वादे करने के लिए कि हम इसको बंद करा देंगे, यहाँ से हटा देंगे, और इलेक्शन हो जाता है, उसके बाद में कोई इधर नहीं आता.
Some members of this Muslim community, a minority in India, have fought attempts by city officials to demolish their homes.
हमें तो ऐसा लगता है कि हमारे जीते जी जब तक हम यहाँ हैं, खत्ता तो हटेगा नहीं, लेकिन अब हमें ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे MCD हमें जरूर यहाँ से हटा देगी.
Silhouetted against the setting sun, Ghazipur looks as if it's always been part of this landscape. But that masks a cruel reality. It's a massive and growing health hazard, which so far has defeated all efforts to bring it under control.